Q Review Print Speaking to the Blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the Herald Scotland Podcast, recorded at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @CuneReview, that is @CuandReview. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@cunereview.com. That is INFORMATION@CUENDREVIEW.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
The Herald Scotland, on Wednesday the 12th of February 2025. From the news section. Charity tackling violence against women calls for longer term support. This is an exclusive article written by Hannah Brown and it's being read by me, Corey. A charity which helps tackle violence against women welcomes additional funding but says they want to see long-term commitments from the Scottish Government. Rebecca Chung is a survivor of sexual assault and runs training sessions for the charity White Ribbon Scotland, which mainly focuses on men taking action to prevent violence towards women. Miss Chung said she has hopes charities like the one she works for will receive more money across a longer period of time to make a seismic shift in tackling gender-based violence. The campaigner told the Herald News, "We can't really make plans of how we are going to make such a seismic shift in attitudes and cultures towards women and girls without knowing there's a future for our work." Her comments come after the Scottish Government announced more than 100 organisations aiming to prevent violence against women will share in a funding uplift of £2.4 million from the Scottish Government. The funding boost will bring the total of the Government's Delivering Equality Safe (DES) fund, which invests in projects tackling violence and supporting survivors, up from £19.2 million to £21.6 million for the year ahead. The DES fund is the sole stream of cash the charity receives from the Scottish Government, and is allocated every year. Ms. Chung mentioned there was previously talk about reform to the funding bids, changing to 5 years apart instead of once every year. Commenting on the additional funding, Ms. Chung said, "We are always going to welcome more money in the pot. We would just be looking for that to be carried on as the years go by. Until we are able to get a significant amount of prevention, then we won't be able to do enough." If government spending plans are passed, White Ribbon will now receive £84,522 from April 2025 to the end of March 2026. This is an increase of £9,522 in comparison to what they received in the last year. The charity is only able to employ 3 people at the moment, and Ms. Chung said the amount of staff they have is nowhere near enough people to eradicate the problem. "If we knew we were getting a little bit more funding for a few more years, that would put us in a much better place for long-term planning and security as a charity," Ms. Chung told the Herald. "It's really important work we are doing, and I think the focus on prevention is obviously now deservedly getting the attention it's needed, as we can't just keep on fixing the problems after they have happened. We are doing a lot at the moment, but how good would that work be if there were 3 more of us?" Ms. Chung explained the charity began as they believe men are the key to tackling gender-based violence. "Women have been fighting for gender equality for years and have only got to a certain point," Ms. Chung said. "Without men and boys advocating for this, it's never going to happen." The campaigner said violence against women is only getting worse, and charities like hers are needed now more than ever. It's not been a well-kept secret that violence against women and girls has been getting a lot worse, Ms. Chung said. What we seem to be tackling now is something that we weren't tackling 5 or 6 years ago when it comes to the extreme misogyny online. So to be able to nip those sorts of attitudes in the bud, we are needed now more than ever. Violence against women is constantly evolving. Until the underlying factor of men disliking women and treating women poorly is solved, there's always going to evolve. Nothing's going to change if we don't tackle this. We can't really make plans of how we're going to make such a seismic shift in attitudes and cultures towards women and girls without knowing there's a future for our work. The DES fund is subject to the Scottish budget being approved. However, ministers aim to have the budget passed by the end of the month for the start of the next financial year. Equalities Minister Calcab Stewart announced the funding increase on a visit yesterday to Say Women, a Glasgow charity offering safe accommodation and emotional support for young survivors of sexual abuse who are facing homelessness. The minister said grassroots organisations across Scotland are at the heart of tackling violence against women and girls. Their work is fundamental to creating a country free from gender-based abuse. This funding boost will support these organisations, will help prevent abuse occurring, and ensure that women and girls who have experienced violence can continue to access the support they deserve. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was an exclusive article written by Hannah Brown, and it was read by me, Corey.
For the Herald, Wednesday, the 12th of February, 2025. Sports section. Celtic singer withdraws from pre-Bayern role following fan backlash. This article is by Robbie Hanratty and is read by Ross. The countdown to a massive UEFA Champions League showdown is on, with Celtic Park set to host one of the biggest nights in European football as Bayern Munich arrive in Glasgow. Demand for tickets has been sky high, with the Scottish Premiership champions going up against the Bundesliga leaders tonight. Celtic had arranged for singer Liam McGrandles to perform a few tunes in front of the sold-out crowd before the first leg kick-off. However, McGrandles, who is a familiar face to many match-goers, has now taken the decision to pull the plug on his appearance after receiving a nasty backlash. It's claimed that some had suggested his presence would ruin the build-up to such a highly anticipated feature. Announcing his decision, McGrandles took to social media to express his disappointment, saying he had chosen to step away from the performance due to the nasty and personal criticism that had been coming his way. He wrote, "Just a wee post to address the mad hate that came my way yesterday. I decided to pull the plug on the gig this morning myself, as it's just not worth the grief I was receiving. I understand that pre-match gig isn't everybody's thing, but some of the stuff was nasty and personal. To get it from fellow Celtic fans was a punch in the gut, to be honest. I've worked extremely hard for nearly 20 years to get into the position of being offered a gig like that, a gig I was never going to knock back. I'm a normal guy who sings in pubs every weekend to provide for his family. I'm not a multi-millionaire living in a bubble. I've got family that would have seen all that last night. I've seen this platform becoming a bit of a cesspit over the years, and so I tend to avoid it. I just say to the faceless accounts that piled on to slaughter me, be careful, as it could be yourself on the receiving end one day. I'm a big boy, and this isn't something that'll stop me from doing the job I love." That article was by Robbie Hanratty, and it was read by Ross. For the Herald, Wednesday, the 12th of February, 2025. Sports section. Hearts boss wary of Rangers retaliation after Scottish Cup upset. This article is by Robbie Hanratty, and it's read by Ross. Heart of Midlothian will be looking to emulate the Queen's Park's heroics by defeating Rangers when they go head-to-head this weekend. Rangers faced Scottish Cup fifth round humiliation at the hands of the second tier side last Sunday, losing 1-0, with the Ibrox club since going silent as angry supporters demand managerial change. Hearts host Rangers 7 days on from one of Scottish football's greatest ever shocks, and their boss, Neil Crinchley, is expecting to face a team who are determined to bounce back, creating the prospect of an exciting Premiership encounter. Critchley experienced a tough start to life in Gorgie, with his squad battling at the wrong end of the division, leading to early calls for his head from some punters. But the 46-year-old has since overseen an upturn in fortune as Hearts go into this clash 8 games unbeaten in all competitions. Previewing the upcoming meeting with Rangers, the Hearts head coach said, "You could say that it makes it more difficult for us because they'll obviously be looking for a response from that game. Take the time out of the equation, and I know Rangers and their supporters won't do that, but they've got excellent players and they were in really good form. So we know whenever you play Rangers, it's a tough game. However, we're at home and we get the energy and passion of our supporters behind us, and we're in good form ourselves. It's got the makings of a really good game. You learn from every game that you play. You look at the good things you've done and can replicate them and do them even better. Also, not forgetting that you want to be yourself. We are at home, want to play our principles of the team that we want to see on the pitch. Be a Hearts team, play with passion, play with endeavour and commitment. You know you're going to have to do that against Rangers. We're going to have to be good without the ball, but also sometimes the best form of defence is to attack. We want to try and always be the dominant team and take to the game to the opposition. It doesn't always work like that. We didn't start particularly well against Kilmarnock recently, but we still found a way to win. So, we have to be adaptable. Rangers will be looking to bounce back from their defeat last weekend, and they will want to start as fast as well. On paper, it makes for a really exciting game. Reflecting on Hearts' recent resurgence, Critchley told Sky Sports, "Maybe some of the indifferent performances or scores, results that we had early on, that actually helped the group to come together. I think we've grown. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time just to develop that trust between each other, but I think the belief in the group has definitely grown. We can win games in different ways and we're unbeaten in good form at the moment. Everything's up for grabs at the moment, really. We've spoken about that as a group. We've got 8 league games left before it goes to the split. Our aim is to try and be in the top 6 and try and push up the league as far as we can. We're still in the Scottish Cup, obviously, making it to the quarter-finals, so we want to go as far as we can in that competition. So, we still have lots to play for." And that article was by Robbie Henratty, and it was read by Ross. For the Herald, Wednesday the 12th of February 2025. Sports section. Saudi Arabia confirms alcohol ban for 2034 World Cup. This article is by Robbie Henratty, and it's read by Ross. Fans attending the 2034 FIFA World Cup in Saudi Arabia will not be able to purchase or consume alcohol at stadiums, hotels or restaurants, the country's ambassador to the UK has confirmed. Unlike the 2022 tournament in Qatar, where alcohol was available in designated areas, including fan zones, before a last-minute stadium ban, Saudi Arabia will make no exceptions to its strict alcohol laws at this stage. Speaking to LBC, Prince Khalid bin Bandar Al Saud reaffirmed Saudi Arabia's stance. He said, "Plenty of fun can be had without alcohol. It's not 100% necessary, and if you want to drink after you leave, you're welcome to, but at the moment we don't have alcohol. Rather like our weather, it's a dry country. Everyone has their own culture. We're happy to accommodate people within the boundaries of our culture, but we don't want to change our culture for someone else." Saudi Arabia's hosting of the tournament has been met with mass controversy, particularly regarding human rights concerns. When asked whether LGBTQ plus fans would be safe to attend, Al Saud insisted that the country would be welcoming. "We will welcome everyone in Saudi," he insisted. "It's not a Saudi event, it's a world event, and to a large extent, we will welcome everyone who wants to come." That article was by Robbie Henratty, and it was read by Ross.
This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday the 12th of February 2025 from the business section. Coffee shop and music venue in Scottish town centre for sale. This article is by Brian Donnelly. A coffee shop and music venue that also has a residential rental property has been brought to the market. The agent said the premises and business are offered as a going concern. Cornerstone business agents said the Acoustic Cafe and Falkirk Loft is a tremendous twin business opportunity located in Falkirk town centre. The agent said the highly visible trading location is 150 metres south of the pedestrianised High Street, as well as being situated a short walk from Falkirk Grahamston train station. The property is an interesting and uniquely presented offering with accommodation arranged over the ground floor, the Acoustic Cafe, and on the first floor, the Falkirk Loft. The Acoustic Cafe is a well-presented coffee shop for 30 internal covers. The premises and business are offered for sale on a going concern basis to include all commercial equipment, and a full inventory will be supplied to purchasers after a formal offer is received. The business has an external raised decking area with seating for 4 picnic benches and an electronically controlled retractable awning. The agent said the Falkirk Loft has an open-plan living room and high-specification kitchen, double-bedroom, utility area with washing machine and dryer, shower with quality fittings and WC. The loft has solar panels fitted on the south roof area, which generates an income from the grid of around £1,000 per annum. The property was imaginatively developed by our client several years ago to create an inviting cafe and coffee shop and a separate first-floor letting accommodation. Initially, the letting accommodation was completed in 2012, with Falkirk Loft trading successfully since then, generating a healthy annual income. Our clients choose to list the letting accommodation on Airbnb. The accommodation is popular with returning clients, business people working in the area, as well as visitors attracted by the Falkirk Wheel and the Kelpies Visitor Centre. The Acoustic Cafe opened in 2016 and has traded strongly since opening. The business is run on a hands-off basis by our clients and is well run on a full-time basis by 4 part-time members of staff. The freehold is offered at a guide price of £275,000. That article was by Brian Donnelly.
From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 13th of February. From the news section. Glasgow School strikes off after teacher cuts scrapped. Article by Gabriel McKay. Planned teacher strikes in Glasgow have been cancelled after councillors backed down on the planned cuts. Glasgow City Council has been driving to cut 450 teaching posts over a 3-year period as a part of wider savings drive, with more than 100 already dropped. The EIS union had argued this would lead to a drop in standards and increase the workload on staff, with a walkout planned for February 20. However, the union received a letter from SNP councillors pledging to withdraw future planned education cuts and containing a promise that additional Scottish Government funding would be used to increase the number of teachers working in Glasgow schools to 2023 levels. It's understood that £17 million will be found elsewhere to fund the reversal. The Glasgow EIS Local Association Secretary Jane Goh said, following a positive meeting with councillors and the receipt of an offer letter from the council's SNP group, Glasgow EIS has taken the decision to suspend our planned strike action on February 20th. The offer discussed in our recent meeting and outlined in the subsequent letter represents a strong result for Glasgow EIS members and the young people in our schools, with a promise to withdraw future planned cuts and pledge to utilise additional Scottish Government funding to help employ more teachers in Glasgow. While the offer is not yet binding and still has to pass through the full processes of the Council and be confirmed in next week's budget, the EIS is suspending strike action as an act of good faith while this process continues to its conclusion. As ever, the EIS will be paying close attention to ensure that the promises outlined in the letter become hard and fast commitments. EIS General Secretary Andrea Bradley says, Glasgow EIS members have secured a significant victory in their campaign against education cuts. It is through working collectively and working in partnership with Glasgow parent groups that our members in Glasgow have secured a political commitment to stop the cuts and a pledge that will increase the number of teachers working in the city's schools. By standing together, standing firm, and by delivering a resounding 95% vote in favour of taking straight action, the EIS members in Glasgow have taken a huge step closer to securing a better future for education in Glasgow and for the pupils and teachers in the city's schools. In many ways, members in Glasgow have been standard bearers for the national EIS Stand Up for Quality Education campaign, which is currently running across the country. This campaign will continue to oppose any cut to education across Scotland while putting pressure on politicians to deliver a better deal for our schools, teachers and young people. Glasgow EIS Local Association has shown the way and demonstrated the power of acting collectively to overcome damaging threats to our education system. The EIS, both nationally and at a local level in Scotland's 32 council areas, will continue to keep a watchful eye on the Scottish Government and local authority spending commitments on education and stands ready to do all it can to stand up for quality education for all young people across the country. A Glasgow City Council spokesperson said, "We have been notified by the EIS that next week's industrial action has been suspended. We are sure our families will welcome the news and there will be no disruption to learning and teaching." And that article was written by Gabriel McKay and read by me, Adam.
This article is from the Herald on Thursday the 13th of February 2025. It is found in the Voices section and the headline is 20 mile per hour zones save children's lives. Let's have more of them, not fewer. And the report is by Rebecca McQuillan. Surely there are more important things to get uptight about than 20 mile per hour speed limits. You can't eliminate all risks from our roads, but when a modest safety measure has such huge benefits and so little impact on drivers, why the beef? The issue has revved up again because there's been a public backlash in Wales against a 2023 policy making 20 miles per hour the default speed limit on urban roads. Reform UK are bursting blood vessels over it and, silliness alert, want to scrap 20 miles per hour all over the UK. Time for a reality check. There are people going about their lives all over the country, many of them children, whose names would be etched on gravestones if we didn't have 20 mile per hour limits. 2 children I know have been hit by car drivers separately in 20 miles per hour zones. Both were bruised and traumatised, but otherwise okay, thank God. But what if the drivers had been going faster? There would have been blue lights everywhere, anguished families, police appealing for witnesses. I can't even think about it. The average person is 7 times more likely to die if hit by a vehicle at 30 miles per hour than at 20 miles per hour. We don't need statistics to tell us this. Anyone who drives knows it. The stopping distance at 20 miles per hour is half what it is at 30. Anyone can be involved in an accident because they're briefly distracted, but clearly, the slower your speed, the less damage you can do. Hundreds more people would be living with life-changing injuries in Scotland alone without these 20 miles per hour speed limits. And where's the downside? 20 zones have hardly any impact on journey times. By the end of 2025, the Scottish Government wants to see 20 mile per hour zones extended in urban areas, where appropriate, keeping some roads at 30 or 40 miles per hour. Provided it's done sensibly, in consultation with local people and businesses, where's the bad? Well, for some, it's tantamount to the encroachment of a communist state. Reform UK aren't fans of 20 miles per hour speed limits, or in fact, most things that require a modicum of behaviour change. How they dislike this world of woke fair trade drag queens with their gender-neutral heat pumps and their 20s plenty signs. Nigel Farage says he would get rid of 20 miles per hour limits and other anti-car policies. I say they'd get rid of them, but actually they're making a show of wanting to get rid of them. They want to appeal to drivers who find them annoying, but also know that they save lives. So they have given themselves a get-out. They say they would scrap 20 mph limits, except where safety is critical. How would that work then? Where are these mythical communities that don't consider their local 20 mph speed limit critical? Show me the neighbourhood that wants to reinstate 30 mph zones everywhere so impatient drivers can put the local school kids at greater risk of serious injury or death. They don't exist. People tend to like 20 mph limits in their community when they have them. Their children are safer, their pets are safer, the air is cleaner. Rolling back 20 mph zones would be much more controversial than rolling them out. Reform UK scrapping 20 mph limits would in reality mean what? Turning a few larger roads back to 30 mph? The whole policy is fallacious nonsense. Still, not to be outdone, the Scottish Conservatives have jumped on the same monster truck by setting themselves up in opposition to another policy. The Scottish Government's proposed lowering of the national speed limit on single carriageway roads from 60 to 50 mph. The idea, out for consultation until March 5th, would save dozens of lives in the first decade if implemented and prevent scores of serious injuries. And again, the difference in journey times would be minimal according to modelling by Transport Scotland. People would have to comply, of course, but most people have done so with other speed limit changes. 50 mph, by the way, is the speed limit on country roads in other countries like Ireland and France. But the Scottish Tories are spitting tacks. Drivers are being punished, they say, as if ministers and civil servants were acting out of spite, instead of trying to spare families the awful tragedy of losing loved ones in road accidents. They make out that deaths and injuries can be prevented through road upgrades alone. Sure, road widening and straightening makes certain stretches of road safer in one sense, but it doesn't encourage safer driving. Where is the evidence that a few road improvements can replicate the safety benefits of a lower speed limit? We need both road improvements and lower speed limits. The 50 mph proposal would come with another change, allowing goods vehicles to travel more quickly on both single and dual carriageways. The Conservatives are full of consternation about raising the speed limit for some vehicles, yay, while lowering it for others, boo. Actually, there is a clear logic to doing the two things together. It would even out the speed of vehicles on single-track roads at 50 mph. It would help prevent tailbacks developing behind goods vehicles. It would make journey times more reliable, with fewer accidents caused by frustrated drivers, predicts the experts. But is anyone listening? There's no question that when speed limits have been changed before, it's made our streets safer at little cost to drivers. Studies in Edinburgh and Bristol have found journey times in urban corridors are barely affected by 20 mph zones. It's traffic lights and other vehicles that really hold up urban drivers. Even in Wales, where controversy rages over 20 mph limits, 100 fewer people were killed or seriously injured on 20 or 30 mph roads within 12 months of implementation. Public opinion there against 20 mph limits might quickly reverse if scaling them back results in more casualties. Sadly, we're losing the ability to have sensible debates about things like this. It gets reduced to silly posturing about a supposed war on motorists. If the naysayers ever did get their way, it would be a sign that, while we might not be world leaders in much anymore, we are getting rather good at shooting ourselves in the foot. That report was by Rebecca McQuillan. This article, The Diary, is to be found in the Herald on Thursday, the 13th of February 2025. It is from the Voices section, and the snippets are compiled by Lorne Jackson. Our headline today: Who says Glasgow students don't have a touch of sense and sensibility? Our first snippet: Queen Jane, approximately. The conversations in Glasgow's West End are often highly esoteric, and for those who don't live in Glasgow's West End, highly esoteric means pure dead brainy. Reader Steve Spencer, who lives in that neck of the woods, was in a trendy cafe and overheard two female student types chatting. Said one to the other, "I can't believe you've never eaten in KFC. What a sheltered existence you've had." "Very true," agreed her friend. "I'm a regular Jane Austen heroine." Slick customer. The other evening, reader Ivan Thompson was enjoying a tipple or three with a pal in a Dundee city centre boozer. Just as Ivan was about to sip his pint, he glanced across the bar and spotted the barman wiping his hand across his snotty nose. The filthy fellow proceeded to use the same hand to brush his hair back from his brow. A disgusted Ivan whispered to his pal, "Did you see that?" "I certainly did," said his pal, who then added, "I bet he serves loads of dosh doing that. Probably never bought a jar of hair gel in his life." Life is sweet. Culinary thought for the day from reader Mark Cooper. There are loads of artificial sweeteners, he points out, but no artificial salteners. Hairy situation. Primary teacher Paul Clark is a hirsute fellow, fecund in the ways of facial fuzz. One of his most curious pupils once said, "Sir, is it only clever folk like you who are allowed to grow beards?" Paul was flattered at this assumption, though he admitted to the youth that there were rare examples of bird bloomers who weren't specially intelligent. Another student entered the discussion at this point, saying, "Nah, I think anyone who's hairy must be dead smart." For further elucidation, the student added, "My dog's pure fuzzy, and he's the smartest dog in the street." Crafty contraction. The diary is celebrating the delights of the English language. However, reader Lisa Barr is of the opinion that our native lingo isn't perfect and could be improved, and she knows just the chap to do the improving. "I've always thought English is far too verbose," says Lisa. "My 7-year-old son surely agrees, because he never says tomorrow morning. Instead, he says to morning, which saves him loads of precious time." And finally, kill your darlings. Literature-loving reader Bill Clayton tells the diary, "I'm considering killing off a few characters in the book I'm writing. It will certainly spice up my autobiography." Those snippets were compiled by Lorne Jackson.
From the Herald Scotland, Sunday the 16th of February. From the news section, exclusive. Scotland's water bill is £113 cheaper than England and Wales. Report by Rebecca McCurdy. Water bills in Scotland will be £113 cheaper than England and Wales, despite an almost 10% price hike from Scottish Water. The SNP has challenged Scottish Labour leader Anna Sauer to admit Scotland's publicly owned water company is more beneficial than the private sector model south of the border. However, water bills will increase by 9.9% in Scotland from April, with a breakdown showing those in the lowest council tax band A will be paying more than £400 for their water and waste collection for the first time. It follows an 8.8% rise last year and a 5% increase in 2023. In England and Wales, water bills will rise by an average of 26%, or £123, from April, Water UK confirmed. The industry in England and Wales is run by numerous private firms, but UK government watchdog Ofwat regulates the proposed increases. It means bills south of the border will increase from £480 to £603 during the 2025-26 on average. But in Scotland, the near 10% rise will see water and sewerage bills rise to an average of £490, £113 cheaper. SNP MSP Willie Coffey urged Mr Sauer to accept the privatisation method under Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer was the wrong path to take. However, Scottish Labour described the comments as gaslighting Scots. Last year, Consumer Scotland warned 1 in 10 Scots households were in water poverty, while 1 in 20 were in severe water poverty,
facing changes for water and sewage exceeding 5% of their disposable income. Mr. Coffey told the Herald, "Public ownership means Scots will save £113 this year compared to those in England. A stark difference and a huge help to households during the cost of living crisis. While England's water companies are run for profit, Scotland's are run for public benefit." Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar needs to admit that privatisation, continued under Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, is a wrong path to deliver public services. Keeping Scotland's water in public ownership was a historically hard fought for and hard won SNP campaign, and the SNP will always protect that for the benefit of those we represent. Meanwhile, Dame Bailey said, "It is utterly insulting that the SNP expects Scots to be grateful for a 10% hike in water charges. It's right that Scottish water is in public hands, something that Scottish Labour delivered, but the SNP is nodding through eye-watering hikes to bills and signing off on obscene levels of executive pay. Under the SNP, families across Scotland are being forced to pay the price of SNP failure, from soaring water bills to council tax hikes to higher income tax rates. Instead of trying to gaslight Scots about their inflation-busting bill hikes, the SNP should step in and stop this 10% rise." A DEFRA, Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, spokesman said, "After years of failure, we are left with record sewage spills and crumbling water infrastructure. We have been clear that the water sector must deliver for customers and the environment, and that customers cannot be expected to pay the price of years of underperformance. This government has wasted no time in placing water companies under special measures through the water bill, which includes new powers to ban the payment of bonuses for polluting water bosses and bring criminal charges against lawbreakers. The UK government's water special measures bill is currently progressing through Westminster. If implemented, it will see harsher penalties put on polluting firms." And that article was an exclusive by Rebecca McCurdy. From the Herald Scotland, Sunday the 16th of February 2025, from the news section, exclusive. Aberdeen Uni staff speak out on bullying claims. This article is written by Josh Pomako. Aberdeen University staff are speaking out amidst claims senior management at the institution has created a culture of fear and suspicion. Several whistleblowers approached the Herald after an internal survey found that 11% of staff had been bullied or harassed at work. In a statement, a university spokesperson said the number of official grievances has decreased over the last 12 months. David Anderson, a professor in anthropology and branch secretary for the UCU Union, was one of the staff members who spoke up. He told the Herald, "People in certain departments are very overworked. They're afraid senior management will come after them, so they don't speak up or say no. People feel completely disempowered. There is no evidence that feedback is being implemented." Another member of staff, who asked to remain anonymous for fears that they could be disciplined, added, "People who ask difficult questions are being targeted with the effect of silencing them, creating a chilling effect on free speech. We have been stripped of our autonomy as academics. It makes many of us feel disrespected." In late 2023, the university was rocked by the revelation of a £15 million funding black hole created by a lull in the number of international postgraduate student enrolments. Tensions worsened after 30 members of the university's Modern Languages department were sent risk of redundancy letters. After several rounds of voluntary severance, which saw more than 200 staff members pack their bags, the university has returned to a more stable financial footing. However, scars remain. In the survey, conducted late last year, 45% of staff agreed or tended to agree that the university's senior management could manage and lead well. Likewise, 37% felt that management listened to and responded to the views of staff. The 11% of staff who felt bullied or harassed was slightly below the survey's national benchmark, 13%. Emotions came to a head in early February. During a staff-wide Q&A session, a female academic asked a question about university management. University Principal George Boyne reacted angrily and questioned the academics' competence according to multiple sources. One staff member said, during the survey meeting, the principal publicly bullied a staff member by questioning their professionalism. Another added, he publicly ridiculed and humiliated the academic when she asked a perfectly legitimate question. The interaction was seen by around 600 members of staff in the session, with 3 colleagues intervening on her behalf in the session and numerous making direct complaints about it afterwards. Boyne apologised during the session and later emailed a statement to the university staff in which he apologised a second time. The statement read, "I apologise unreservedly that my response to one of the questions in the Q&A session that follows the presentation was inappropriate, and have since written to the colleague involved to formally apologise for this. I also apologise to you all for this lapse in the standard of interaction that we all have a right to expect, and express sincere thanks to those who brought their concerns to my attention." Speaking to the Herald, several academics said the incident is emblematic of a toxic culture which has intensified in the months following the university's financial crisis. However, not all staff are pessimistic. One academic said that the university had moved on well from the issues of the past year and did not agree with the other's characterisation of workplace culture. Members of the university's academic senate have also faced censure for critical comments made about senior management. One source said, "The current environment has significantly hindered freedom of speech, as evidenced by the results of the staff survey, which indicate a lack of trust in senior leadership." Another academic told us, "It feels like we are powerless. Many of us are trapped in our jobs, but with the sector being in abyss right now, we don't have any other options. There is no way for senior management to rationalise staff support of the direction they are taking. They are working very hard to avoid accountability." A third source said, "It's properly grim, and no one can see it improving any time soon. People, on Senate and beyond, are very wary of speaking out for fear of finding themselves on the subject of disciplinary processes. The mask is coming off," Anderson noted, adding, "We're in a strange situation where we are trying to lobby for respect from our senior managers. Any criticism is dismissed. They see themselves as being the saviours of the university." In a statement, a University of Aberdeen spokesperson said, "The UK higher education sector is experiencing unprecedented financial challenges, and the University of Aberdeen took early and effective action to make £90 million of in-year savings. During this change programme, we offered a voluntary severance and enhanced retirement packages, reviewed the courses that we offer, and provided regular financial updates to staff. These measures have enabled us to make significant progress towards restoring the university to a sound financial footing. We fully acknowledge the impact these changes have had on colleagues and greatly value their agility and the role they have played. The tireless efforts of all of our staff led to our best ever UK League Table rankings in the autumn of 2024, despite the financial pressures on the higher education sector. The university was recently commended by the new Chief Executive of the Scottish Funding Council for the approach we have taken to stabilising our financial position." The spokesperson added, "While it is understandable to experience higher levels of dissatisfaction among staff during a significant period of financial difficulty, we have actually seen a decrease in formal grievances over the last 12 months. During this time, we have also introduced a new Dignity at Work and Study toolkit, which has been well received, and matters are investigated fairly, promptly and transparently. Our open sessions and our staff survey are important staff engagement options that enable our community to feed back to senior management and their colleagues. Learning from and acting on these insights is an ongoing process that we take forward as we strive to continually enhance well-being in the workplace." And that article was an exclusive by Josh Pizzuto-Pomacco, and it was read by me, Ian McKenna. From the Herald Scotland, Sunday the 16th of February 2025, from the news section, exclusive: "Has Leith's low traffic neighbourhood been a success?" by Donald Turville, Edinburgh correspondent. Like a growing number of cities, Edinburgh has found itself caught up in a debate over low traffic neighbourhoods, LTNs, turned toxic. The arrival of planters, benches and traffic cameras blocking off more streets in traffic heavy neighbourhoods up and down the country has turbocharged pedestrian versus motorist discourse, often dominated by those who shout the loudest and leave little room for nuance or compromise on the important topic of road safety. In Leith, in an apparent attempt to distance the scheme from the divisive LTN label, the council instead brought it under the banner of Leith Connections, which also includes creating a segregated cycle route from the foot of the walk to Ocean Terminal, which work started on last year. But unlike many other LTNs across the UK, in places like London and Oxford, where cameras and bollards were destroyed, Leith's experiment with traffic management measures to stop cars taking shortcuts through certain streets has remained peaceful. Edinburgh Council has a tumultuous time with LTNs in the recent past. During its last LTM scheme in the famously congested suburb of Corstorphine, a camera set up to find drivers who flouted the rules was cut down 3 times in the space of a year, which cost the authority more than the camera raised through fines, while a Stop the Corstorphine LTM Facebook group grew to over 2,000 members. The camera was eventually removed last year following a decision at a meeting of the Transport and Environment Committee, attended by a group of locals armed with anti-LTM placards, including one man who was told by the convener to sit quietly after he heckled officers as they said it was difficult to establish traffic displacement from one place to another. The capital's first foray into low traffic schemes in East Craigs concluded in all measures being scrapped in 2021 after a crowd-funded legal fight found certain traffic orders would be unlawful. Figures showing less than half of the local population own cars could partly explain why there's been a comparative lack of protest in Leith, and the debate has simmered away quietly in the background. Until now. Opposing views on the success of Leith's LTM have come into the fore ahead of a Crunch Council meeting on Tuesday, with community groups at odds over the level of traffic displacement caused by the road closures. Councillors will vote at next week's Traffic Relation Orders Subcommittee on whether to make permanent the core elements trialled as part of the scheme, such as traffic filters and a bus gate that allows only buses, taxis and cycles westbound through Leith Links, although no buses serve Links Place. According to the Council's independent market research, 74% of the people in the area supported the changes and 6% opposed. These results have been called into question by members of Leith Links Community Council, LLCC, whose own survey painted a different picture. A report from officials setting out data from traffic monitoring said there had been a significant drop in traffic on roads which are no longer open through traffic, and some level of displacement of traffic, which were both expected impacts of the measures introduced. It said redirection of traffic from roads within the project area does not correlate to a like-for-like increase in traffic on boundary roads. Adding this suggested some evidence that the scheme may have been having an effect on reducing overall traffic levels as opposed to simply displacement. The Council also pointed to this as potential evidence of the positive impact in the area of the introduction of tram services to New Haven. However, at 4 out of 5 junctions monitored on the edge of the scheme, peak hour traffic increased between 2.6% and 9.1% a year on from the measures being introduced, which, LLCC Secretary Sally Miller said, can't be brushed off. The Community Council is calling for the bus gate to be scrapped, more comprehensive traffic monitoring and highly targeted micro-consultations. In its own survey of 362 locals, found 40% generally supported the LTN, 34% opposed and 26% with mixed feelings. But Miller told the Herald the group is not calling for the LTN to be dropped completely. There's obviously a lot of people who feel very positively about certain aspects of it, she said. She claimed the closure of some streets to through traffic forced vehicles onto roads around the boundary of the LTN where congestion has increased. People inside the LTN are very happy, of course, because they've got nice, quiet, safe streets. Some of them have acquired a nice private enclave around their own house. But the biggest problem is the traffic that's been displaced on the perimeter roads around and outside of the LTN. She said the traffic displacement was very obvious to anybody who lives around the edge of a low traffic neighbourhood. There certainly are lots of people who are in favour of the reduced traffic within the low traffic area, and I would be one of them. We can see that with our own eyes, just in the same ways as we can see the increase in traffic on the perimeter. The Community Council remarked one section of the LTN near the shore had become known locally by some as the Bermuda Triangle because cars can go round and round there and struggle to find a way out due to roadblocks in place. It is definitely lowering traffic in a general sense within the area, and that is generally popular with a lot of people, but I think the view that it's been done rather crudely, she said. Rachel Revesz, who chairs the Livable Leaf Group campaign for the LTN to be made permanent and eventually expanded, said it was inevitable some would be inconvenienced by the charges, but that this was a small price to pay for cutting through traffic in residential areas. Nothing is 100% perfect, but overall, she said, adding the scheme had been a resounding success, not only because the majority of residents have continually supported it, and not just because of the anecdotal evidence. The independent data has come back and it's been broadly successful. She added, let's stick with what we have and improve it. Even roads that are outside, like LTN Ferry Road, Easter Road, they've all seen traffic go down. And she disputed the argument traffic was simply being pushed onto rounds in the boundary of the project area. When you look at the average number of vehicle counts during peak times, only one area of Great Junction Street has gone up near the foot of the walk. In terms of boundary roads, that's not the case. This has been just one measure which has changed traffic patterns among the last couple of years, alongside Leeds' new controlled parking zone and the tram connection which brought in a new signalling system at the foot of the walk. Revesz continued. All of these things play a part. We've got loads of housing developments going on and a rising population. You can't look at everything bad or everything good. Part of it is to encourage walking, wheeling and cycling. The other part is to deter driving. People will be inconvenienced by that and we can't get around that. That's part of the strategy to stop so many people who can afford to stop making smaller, unnecessary journeys in an urban environment. The decision next week is hopefully going to make this scheme permanent, and I hope it will be the first step in continued improvements in the neighbourhood. I don't think the LTN in its current format is the be-all and end-all, but we're all strongly in favour of clean air and safe streets, and we need to all work for that. Views are similarly mixed in the business community. Evie Murray, founder of the Earth in Common social enterprise, which manages Leith Community Croft and Cafe on John's Place in the heart of the LTN, said, since the changes were trialled, there was more of a sense of people enjoying the space. She said, it's very nice to see people socialising, people sitting there and enjoying the plants. You see a lot of friendliness, and that wasn't here before it. I think that the amount of traffic that used to go up here, it's just unnecessary. I'm definitely up for Leith to be a mini Copenhagen, and my aspiration is that we see many more people, and most importantly for children to feel safe when riding around in their bikes or walking to school. That level of safety exists when the car is removed from the street. Meanwhile, Ashley Harley, who runs the popular Mimi's Bakehouse on the shore, blamed a recent sharp decline in sales partly on the LTN. Our business is 50% down this January compared to January, and other businesses are staying the same, she said. It's a perfect storm of inaccessibility with road closures and roadworks blocking buses from going down the shore. It's just infuriating. And Leith Links is an absolute joke. The bus gate needs changed. The Council's Traffic Regulation Order Subcommittee will meet next Tuesday, February 18th, to decide the future of the scheme. And the article was an exclusive by Donna Turville. From the Herald Scotland, Sunday the 16th of February 2025, from the news section. Exclusive. Sandy Peggy Tribunal. Gray told NHS 5 acted illegally. This article was written by Andrew Learmonth. Health Secretary Neil Gray was warned in June last year that NHS 5 may have acted illegally in the row over a trans woman doctor's use of a female-only changing room the Herald on Sunday can reveal. The SNP minister was told the Health Board was failing to comply with its legal obligations to provide suitable workplace single-sex toilets and changing facilities for its staff. It is not known if he took any legal advice after receiving the disclosure from Sandy Peggy's solicitor. He did, however, pass the email to a policy official who said it was NHS 5's responsibility and recommended the nurse phone an NHS whistleblowing helpline. One MSP said it was deeply concerning that Mr Gray did nothing to intervene in the case after the early warning. Ms Peggy, who has worked at Victoria Hospital in Kirkcaldy for 30 years, was disciplined after she complained that sharing the room with Dr Beth Upton amounted to unlawful harassment under the Equality Act. Ms Peggy initially raised concerns in August and late October with her line manager and had left the female changing room when Dr Upton was there. She was told to use a cupboard or toilet cubicle to change in. On Christmas Eve, the nurse experienced a sudden heavy period and was worried that she had bled through her scrubs. When she went to the changing room and found Dr Upton there, she stated that, in her view, the medic was a man and should not be there. Shortly after this, Dr Upton made a formal complaint against Ms Peggy. The A&E clinician also raised concerns around patient safety, claiming Ms Peggy had walked out on seriously ill patients they were treating in order to avoid being in the same room. While Ms Peggy was alerted to the allegation of a hate incident, she was not told about the patient safety concerns until months later. She denies ever ignoring Dr Upton or walking out on any patient. She was placed on special leave in late December 2023 and then suspended from duty in January 2024 pending an investigation into her alleged unwanted behaviours towards another member of NHS 5 staff. Ms Peggy's suspension was lifted in April of that year, but she was still subject to the disciplinary process. She then lodged legal proceedings in the Employment Tribunal against NHS 5 and Dr Upton, alleging multiple breaches of the Equality Act 2010. Shortly after, the nurse's lawyer, Margaret Gribbin, wrote to Mr Gray to say NHS 5 was failing to comply with its legal obligations to provide suitable workplace single-sex toilets and changing facilities for its staff. She said that they were also failing to take action to ensure females are not sexually harassed at their place of work. The lawyer said they were also failing to comply with its legal obligations under the 2010 Act not to indirectly discriminate against female staff and to comply with the legal obligations under the Human Rights Act 1998 not to expose female staff to violations of their Article 3 and 8 rights to privacy and dignity and not be exposed to indecent exposure or voyeurism. In response to the letter, a civil servant working in the Scottish Government's Health Workforce Directorate said they expected everybody to be treated fairly and with respect. They said, responsibility for complying with the requirements of the Equality Act rests with NHS Scotland boards as employers. The letter continued, the Scottish Government supports the appropriate use of the single-sex exemptions by employers where it is a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim. Health boards should assess each situation individually and sensitively, using experience and expertise to determine the appropriate course of action, whilst fulfilling their responsibilities under the Equality Act. They said Ms Peggy could report her concerns to the Independent National Whistleblowing Officer and provide confidential help via their independent advice line. The Employment Tribunal was supposed to have concluded on Friday after 10 days, but has now been adjourned until the 16th of July, when it is expected to last a further 11 days. Giving evidence, Ms Peggy's line manager, clinical nurse manager Esther Davidson, told the tribunal she had been advised by NHS 5's Equality and Diversity Department that she was not permitted to exclude transgender females from the changing rooms. However, legal experts dispute that. The Workplace, Health, Safety and Welfare Regulations 1992 state that changing facilities will not be suitable unless they include separate facilities for or separate use of facilities by men and women where necessary for reasons of propriety. Dr Upton does not have a gender recognition certificate, which means that, in the eyes of the law, they are a man. Writing in The Critic, Dr. Michael Foran, lecturer in public law at the University of Glasgow, said, "Given the fact that in a hospital staff must change completely into scrubs, it is obvious that these regulations envisage separate facilities for men and women being necessary for reasons of propriety. Some estimates have suggested the cost of defending the Employment Tribunal, which NHS Fife wanted to be heard in private, could be in the hundreds of thousands of pounds." Last year, NHS Fife warned the Scottish Government they were anticipating a £55 million budget gap by March 2025. Mr Gray was asked about the tribunal on Thursday. He said the Scottish Government would look with interest at the outcome and take on board the recommendations as they come forward. When pushed on implications for other health boards, Mr Gray said, "Potentially, but I can't comment or speculate on an ongoing tribunal." Former SNP MP Joanna Cherry KC said the Scottish Government needed to clarify its position as a matter of urgency. She said, "It won't do for the Scottish Government to distance themselves in public from Nicola Sturgeon's legacy on gender politics and to mouth platitudes about women's rights to single-sex spaces when huge sums of taxpayers' money are being spent arguing against such rights in court. That's what happened in the Supreme Court at the end of last year, and it's happening again at this tribunal in Dundee. We need deeds, not words. The public have a right to know what the government's position really is and why so much of their money has been spent defending these cases." Tory MSP Murdo Fraser, whose Mid-Scotland and Fife constituency covers the health board, said his constituents were appalled that an NHS board which already has huge financial issues is spending tens of thousands on legal costs defending Sandy Peggy's tribunal. He added, "There are very serious questions here for NHS Fife's board and senior management, which I know they will not want to answer until the case is resolved, but that they will not be able to hide away from." The revelation that Neil Gray was contacted about this last year but did nothing to intervene is deeply concerning, particularly given the funding situation at NHS Fife. We know that under Nicola Sturgeon, the entire Scottish public sector was subject to policy capture by a tiny group of trans activists, and it seems that her successor, John Swinney, has done nothing to rectify the situation. Maya Forstater, CEO of the Sex Matters charity, contrasted Neil Gray's unwillingness to act with his counterpart in Westminster. West Streety met with 5 nurses from Darlington who are suing the NHS Trust for allowing a colleague who was born male to use the female changing room at Darlington Memorial Hospital. The Labour Minister told the women the issue of single-sex spaces had not been taken seriously enough and that "we have created an unnecessary conflict." Ms Forstater said, "This delay in taking action is an abdication of responsibility for making sure that the NHS Scotland's own policies are in line with the law." Neil Gray's reticence contrasts with Health Secretary West Streeting's willingness to voice support for the Darlington nurses in a similar case in England, and Health Minister Karen Smythe's one-word answer, no, to whether female NHS employees should be expected to put up with male colleagues in their changing rooms. A Scottish Government spokesperson said, "This is an ongoing employment tribunal and it will not be appropriate to comment." And that article was an exclusive by Andrew Learmonth.
The Herald, Monday the 17th of February, from the news section. Shocking hike in fat cap bonuses, £1.6 million for Scottish Water execs. An exclusive article by Martin Williams. Executives of the nation's state-owned water supplier have seen bonuses hiked by over a third in 1 year, taking a 5-year total to nearly £1.6 million, despite public sector pay rules that suspended the payments. The Herald can reveal that the bonuses and benefits of the 3 key Scottish Water executives amounted to £330,000 in 2023-24, with over £70,000 given to incoming Chief Executive Alex Plant as a relocation handout. It has led to new calls for a rethink of the public sector pay rules. In 2022-23, 3 key executives of Scottish Water, Douglas Milliken, Peter Farrer and Alan Scott, between them pooled in £242,000 in performance bonuses and benefits, which include car allowances and inclusion on a life assurance scheme on top of 6-figure salaries. But since the installation of Chief Executive Alex Plant in place of Douglas Milliken in 2023, the executive bonuses have risen to £329,000 in 2023-24. Mr Plant is in the first 10 months in post has received a record amount in recent years in performance bonuses and benefits for a chief executive, amounting to £170,000 on top of a £246,000 basic salary, taking his remuneration package, including pension, to £483,000. Those benefits included a one-off £73,000 payment made to Mr Plant, who had previously been a Director of Strategy and Regulation at Anglian Water, to relocate to Scotland. That included £13,000 in relocation assistance, an accommodation allowance of £29,000 and a contribution of £42,000 towards land, building and transaction tax, or LBTT, associated with the purchase of a new permanent home. It comes as water bills in Scotland will increase by almost 10% in April, while Scottish Water is in the midst of a bitter pay dispute with staff. The bonuses and benefits windfall for the past 5 years includes £395,000 given to Mr Milliken, Mr Farrer and Mr Scott in 2021-22 as part of a long-term incentive plan covering the 6 years to March 2021. State-owned Scottish Water is included amongst the list of bodies, including Scottish Government's core directorates. Its associated departments, agencies and corporations that the Scottish Government's public sector pay policy applies to. Other state-owned firms such as Ferguson Marine are not included. The public sector pay policy says that the suspension of bonuses allows public bodies to maximise their resources to address fair pay issues and pay awards. It said that the suspension applies to all non-consolidated performance payments. It also says that there is a presumption against provision for performance payments in all new chief executive contracts. Richard Leonard, the former Scottish Labour leader who is convener of Holyrood's Public Audit Committee, is expected to raise the issue of Scottish Water executive pay this week at the Scottish Parliament. He said, "These bonuses for bosses should not exist. If there is money for bonuses, there is money to put into the pay pot for the benefits of everyone." The Scottish Government says ministers have approved bonus payments and that Scottish Water had an exemption from the pay rules in recognition of the need to retain staff in competition with the private sector. That is despite remaining listed as one of the public sector bodies that the pay rules apply to. Scottish Water states that they maintain and operate a simple remuneration structure with a pay policy that aims to attract, develop, motivate and retain highly talented people at all levels of the organisation, and to incentivise and reward good individual and corporate performance as well as outperformance. Mr Plant's pay package of £483,000 will be highlighted at Holyrood and contrasted with the 3.4% rise offered to workers which they rejected. Claire Greer, GMB Scotland organiser at Scottish Water, said workers will be angered to discover bonuses were given in the last full while staff vote on industrial action after pay talks collapsed in the wake of a basic pay offer of 3.4%. She said the huge bonuses being paid demolish the credibility of the Scottish Government's public pay policy. She said that such exorbitant bonuses have been paid to a few executives at the very top of Scottish Water would be shocking if it was not entirely predictable. Year after year, workers have to scratch and fight to receive a fair pay rise, while year after year the most senior managers are showered with cash. Of course, it is obscene that bonuses paid to executives of publicly owned company climb 36%, while staff are offered just 3.4%. But they are beyond embarrassment. Government ministers will, as usual, dance on a pinhead to defend these bonuses, despite them breaching their own policies on public pay. They will claim the payments are justified because Scottish Water is hitting its targets, but that is only because of the skills, experience and commitment of our members. Their work needs to be fairly rewarded, and it is beyond time for executives to stop counting their money and recognise that. Financial documents seen by the Herald show that the collective level of performance bonuses and benefits to the three executives has more than doubled since 2019-20, before the pandemic rising from 138,000 to 329,000. Outgoing Chief Executive Douglas Millican, in his final 2 months in post, received £15,000 in bonuses and benefits, including £13,000 under Scottish Water's bonus scheme, which he calls the Annual Outperformance Incentive Plan, or AOIP. Over the last 5 years, he has amassed £475,000 in bonuses and benefits. That was made up of £265,000 under the Annual Incentive Plan, £160,000 from the Long-Term Incentive Plan, and £50,000 in benefits. Peter Farah, the Chief Operating Officer, gathered £73,000 in bonuses under the incentive plan in 2023-24 alone, a hike of £11,000, along with benefits of £11,000. His latest annual salary package, including pension benefits in 2023-24, was at £199,000 in 2023-24. Over the 5 years, he had £510,000 in bonuses and benefits. That included £337,000 in annual bonus and £118,000 from the long-term incentive plan and £55,000 in benefits. Alan Scott, who was Strategy and Commercial Director before retiring at the end of 2023, having previously been Finance Director, got £54,000 under the annual bonus plan for his final 9 months in post, along with benefits of £6,000, leaving with a final pay package of £160,000. He amassed £443,000 in bonus and benefits over the 5 years. That included £279,000 from the annual bonus scheme, £117,000 from the long-term incentive plan, and £47,000 in benefits. Scottish Water said a 9.9 rise in water bills was necessary from April to invest in infrastructure to cope with periods of drought and intense rainfall brought on by climate change. It means homes in the lowest council tax band A will be charged more than £400 for their supply and wastewater collection for the first time. The body also said the increase, which follows an 8.8 rise last year and a 5% rise in 2023, would rebalance charges which were held back to help households after the COVID pandemic and cost of living crisis. According to the Scottish Government's pay rules, if any pay awards are implemented or daily fees are introduced without approval or increase beyond that for which approval had been obtained previously, the sponsor director and the accountable officer will be required to explain the matter to the remuneration group, who may refer to ministers. This could result in punitive action being taken by the Scottish Government, such as the recovery of any overpayments, the capping of future increases, or a governance review of the public body. Scottish Water, which serves more than 2.6 million households, operates under an annual borrowing limit set by the Scottish Government. The annual borrowing limit controls the amount by which Scottish Water can increase externally sourced finance. Net new borrowing by Scottish Water from the Scottish Government was planned to be the tune of £170 million in 2024-25 to carry out its activities. As at March 31st, 2024, government loans to Scottish Water total £4.7 billion. A Scottish Water spokesman said, "Scottish Water is publicly owned and commercially operated, and executive salaries, among the lowest of any comparable company in the UK, are agreed by the Scottish Water Board and the Scottish Government, and are based on market factors to ensure we have the right people leading our business. Incentive plans are driven by outperformance of clear business targets, verified by our independent regulators. This reflects the need for Scottish Water to operate on a commercial basis within the public sector, and in recognition of this, The Scottish Government has given us the flexibility to reward all employees as performance merits it. Scottish Water continues to outperform and meet ministerial objectives. The spokesman added, "As a responsible employer, we want to make sure our people are paid fairly. That's why we've offered a 3.4% rise, significantly above inflation, with a guaranteed £1,400 minimum increase. This means those in lower salary grades receive the highest percentage increase in Scottish Water. With previous improvements to pay and conditions, this offer means Scottish Water will be spending 17% more on employee salaries than 2 years ago. This is in addition to reducing our company work week to 35 hours. A Scottish Government spokesman said, "The framework for bonus payments has to be approved by Scottish ministers. The current framework was approved in advance of the 2021-27 regulatory period." The Herald, Monday the 17th of February, from the news section. Tom Jones announces Dundee Discovery Festival gig as part of tour by Mark McDougall. Tom Jones has been announced as the headline act for Day 3 of Dundee's Discovery Festival at Slessor Gardens. The Welsh singer will perform on Sunday, July the 27th, as part of his Defy Explanation tour to bring the 3-day event to a close. The Welsh Ocean Colour Scene, the Fratellas, Human League and more have already been announced to take part in the event. The 84-year-old has been performing for more than 6 decades and has sold more than 100 million records, as he continues to be a hit with all ages. He rose to fame in the 60s, with hits such as It's Not Unusual, Delilah, Green Green Grass of Home, and more, as well as having his own TV show. He has had collaborations with people such as Stevie Wonder, Aretha Franklin and Dolly Parton, and now he'll perform in Dundee in July. He was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II in 2006 and has won multiple awards throughout his impressive career. It is expected to be a capacity crowd at the event, with tickets going on sale on Friday at 10 a.m, and they are priced from £55 plus booking fee. Discovery Festival organisers said, "We're thrilled to announce a third and final day of incredible music at Dundee's Slessor Gardens, rounding off the weekend with a legendary performance from Sir Tom Jones. It's set to be an unforgettable weekend, and we can't wait for fans to come together, sing along to iconic classics, and celebrate an amazing few days of live music in Dundee."
From Herald Scotland, 13th of February 2025, from the STEM section of the business section. Artificial intelligence in healthcare is a help, not a hindrance. Article by Catriona Brooksbank. Artificial intelligence has developed rapidly and is changing many aspects of the modern world. In healthcare, the use of AI has the potential to transform patient pathways and outcomes by improving care and making diagnostic processes faster and more sophisticated. Last month, the Prime Minister announced plans for an AI revolution, pitching the UK as a future world leader on artificial intelligence. At the West of Scotland Innovation Hub, WOSIH, hosted by NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde and funded by the Chief Scientist Office, we are beginning to witness its impact on the management of long-term illnesses, diagnoses and tackling health inequalities. The way healthcare is delivered is changing in response to the demands placed on our NHS, with technology and the at-home management of conditions a huge part of that. AI algorithms are being trialled to help speed up diagnoses of certain conditions. These can analyse images from X-rays and CT scans with remarkable accuracy, flagging issues for quicker investigation by clinicians. One example is the radiographic accelerated detection and identification of cancer of the lung, AI-assisted X-ray analysis research study sponsored by the WOSIH in collaboration with QURE.ai and the University of Glasgow. Routine outpatient chest X-rays are checked in real time by AI to identify possible lung cancer, prioritizing radiologist workflow for clinician reporting. This can result in potentially earlier detection and treatment. Another trial, ACCEPT, assess the clinical effectiveness in prioritizing CT heads, which has been taking place at Queen Elizabeth University Hospital, looks at the use of AI to improve turnaround times for head trauma CT scans, with the aim of reducing pressures on A&E departments. AI also has the potential to help clinicians make early interventions, using analytics to better predict disease progression, identify at-risk populations, and personalised treatment plans. For example, AI models have been used to predict the likelihood of patients developing conditions such as diabetes or heart disease based on their medical history and lifestyle factors. This could allow medics to intervene at an earlier stage, potentially preventing these diseases from progressing. Early interventions and the better management of illnesses can reduce unscheduled attendances at hospital, allowing patients with the most urgent need for care to be prioritised. The use of AI in healthcare within a trusted regulatory framework may offer opportunities to streamline patient pathways and address deeply entrenched inequalities by using routinely collected data to identify social determinants of health. AI can also enable improved use of healthcare data to personalise treatment and may allow for better workflow prioritisation by staff. There have been legitimate and understandable concerns around the introduction of AI in different professions, but AI cannot operate in isolation. Clinicians must review AI-generated results before diagnosis or treatment decisions are made, ensuring patient care remains safe and effective. It does not replace healthcare professionals and should instead be looked upon as a powerful, well-tested tool. We must embrace these new technologies and ensure our healthcare system, patients and staff can benefit from the safe, well-researched and ethical improvements AI can offer. And that article was written by Dr. Catriona Brooksbank, who is the Research and Innovation Lead for the West of Scotland Innovation Hub, which is hosted by NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde. And that was an agenda column for outside contributors. Contact agenda@theherald.co.uk. From Herald Scotland, 10th of February 2025. From the STEM section of the business section. AI isn't the problem in an MSP's use of Holyrood questions. Article by Rebecca McCurdy. AI isn't the reason why an MSP submitted almost 1,000 Holyrood questions in a month, but there's still a problem. There have been many issues in Scottish politics that have been dubbed a scandal. Michael Matheson's resignation after wrapping up an £11,000 parliamentary iPad bill while on a family holiday in Morocco, for example. When it was reported that Tory MSP Douglas Lumsden submitted 987 questions to officials in January allegedly using AI, a new outrage emerged, just in time for Holyrood's recess. But the North East Region MSP has since denied using the technology to draft hundreds of questions. Case closed? Not when you look at some of the questions being asked. Lumsden at first did not deny AI was being used, instead taking to social media to state he was asking questions his constituents wanted to know. He said officials shouldn't be afraid of answering the questions put to them. Quoting Arnold Schwarzenegger's famous lines from The Terminator, he warned SNP ministers to brace themselves for more questions, telling them, "I'll be back." However, here's the problem. Flags, bees, jars of honey, and paper straws were just some of the hot topics on Lumsden's question list last month. To be fair to him, important questions were also asked. The scale of accidents on the A9 and A96, considered to be amongst the most dangerous trunk roads in the country, featured. And his questioning means we now know there are no forensic pathologists in Aberdeen. These are, no doubt, important issues to people, not just in the North East, but to the wider public in Scotland. But should taxpayers be covering the cost of finding out how many national flags are owned by the Scottish Government and how much money is spent by Parliament maintaining them in the last decade? How about how many times Holyrood's beekeeper tends to the Parliament's beehives, or that those bees delivered just 144 jars of honey in 5 years? The truth is whether AI was or was not used to submit masses of questions to officials, we should be questioning whether these are the quality of questions we have come to expect from our elected politicians. And are they a useful way for MSPs and parliamentary officials to spend their time? And while many of these could be considered credible, it is time we ask whether parliamentary systems in place to allow politicians to access vital answers should be used for such wasteful means. The question on whether AI was used was an important one, but now let's look at better ways for MSPs to spend their time. And that article was written by Rebecca McCurdy.
That concludes this week's edition of the Herald Scotland Podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels, rate, review, and to tell your friends about our service.